A significant event happened in his life, and he was given a 1% chance to live. Let's take him through what happened in December of 2005.
So in New York City, the Transit Authority went on strike. No buses, no trains, nothing. My firehouse was up in Spanish Harlem. I tried to ride my bike to work. I remember driving up 3rd Avenue North, and this big white bus just coming from all the way to the left. It's 5:30 in the morning. It's pitch black. And I'm like, holy shit. He gets right in front of me, and I couldn't stop. For whatever reason, I didn't bounce off the side of the bus. I got sucked underneath.
Oh my gosh, you went under
I was under the bus. The bike basically split me open like a can from my anus to my sternum. But the worst is I was bleeding to death. I spent 5 months in the hospital, had about 43 surgeries in that period of time.
43 surgeries?
43 different surgeries. Most of them were internal. What I did have was a side table with about 19 different medications on it. Night after night, I rolled over and looked at them and said, is it enough?
What do you mean by is it enough? What do you
to
mean?
kill me?
Oh my gosh. What is it that got you through?
The conversation with Mom. I just said to her, I'm glad you prayed and I lived. I wish you prayed for me to die. She said to me, enough's enough. You're not the only person in this world that is suffering. If you want to be a miserable SOB the rest of your life, do it by yourself. That was the spark that I needed to hear. I've accepted this new body, accepted this adversity in my life. I came back and did that marathon in 3 years. It took me 7 hours and 30 minutes.
You finished it.
I finished it. That's what I would tell someone who's going through a hard time right now. Take a deep breath. 1, you're not the only person going through it. 2, God knows you're strong enough to succeed. 3, go back. What were you doing when you were happy? Figure it out and redo it. Repeat it. Start dreaming again.
If you could go back.
If I can go back 19 years ago, would I have the bus miss me? No.
Wow.
I'd do it again.
Bro, this is an all-time conversation right here.
So, hey guys, listen, we're all trying to get more productive. And the question is, how do you find a way to get an edge? I'm a big believer that if you're getting mentoring or you're in an environment that causes growth, a growth-based environment, that you're much more likely to grow and you're going to grow faster. And that's why I love Growth Day. Growth Day is an app that my friend Brendan Bouchard has created that I'm a big fan of. Write this down, growthday.com/ed. So if you want to be more productive, by the way, he's asked me, I post videos in there every single Monday that get your day off to the right start. He's got about $5,000, $10,000 worth of courses that are in there that come with the app. Also, some of the top influencers in the world are all posting content in there on a regular basis, like having the Avengers of personal development and business in one app. And I'm honored that he asked me to be a part of it as well and contribute on a weekly basis, and I do. So go over there and get signed up. You're going to get a free, tuition-free voucher to go to an event with Brendan and myself and a bunch of other influencers as well. So you get a free event out of it also. So go to growthday.com/ed. That's growthday.com/ed.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. So you know when I do an in-person interview, something big's about to happen today. And so the gentleman to my right had a 99% chance of not being here today. And I don't mean in our studio. I mean of still being on earth and being alive. A significant event happened in his life that you're going to hear about in a minute. He was given a 1% chance to live. And you're going to hear the story of what happened to him today and his comeback and the amazing lessons that were taken from that tragic event and the journey that he's been on. Today's going to be emotional for you, but more than anything, it's going to give you perspective. It's going to give you deep reasons, and it's going to give you some insights of how to make a comeback. Or if you don't need a comeback, just take your life to the next level. He's also a tremendous speaker and communicator. He has a book that's been out now called The Long Run, and you're going to figure out just in about 10 minutes here why it's called The Long Run. So my guest today is Matt Long. Matt, welcome to the show.
Ed, thanks for having me, man. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for being here, brother, and coming in person too. So let's kind of go back to December of 2005, and you had a pretty good life going at that time.
Yeah, I would say so. I was a New York City fireman for 12 years at that point, an athlete my entire life, and I had just completed the New York City Marathon, qualifying for Boston. I'm 38 years old, and I'm in better shape than I was when I was 21.
And that was the big goal. You did the New York because you wanted to run in the Boston Marathon, right?
Correct, 100%. Boston is that unique stature where, you meet someone that ran it, you say, where'd you qualify? When you meet someone who finished New York, you ask them how fast they ran. Did you break 4 hours? But Boston is like this, you got to qualify to get there, at least back then. And that was our goal. The group of guys I was running with.
When you were prepping, just so I understand the whole genesis of the story, you had left like a Wall Street job, I think, right? And then become a New York City firefighter. Is that right? Am I right?
Correct. Well, I was an accountant of all things.
Okay.
So it wasn't even as sexy as Wall Street.
Okay.
I was an accountant at one of the big 8 accounting firms. And I knew that wasn't for me. So I wrote it out for 2 years, the best I could, and got involved in bartending and in the restaurant business, and then became a New York City firefighter when I was 26.
So you're doing this profession that everybody now looks up to and understands the heroic nature. By the way, just with the fires recently in LA, just watching those guys made me think of you, because I knew we were going to be doing this interview. And so sometimes you look at those guys, you think they're supermen, but they're men, right? And so are you, and we can all be hurt and injured or have tragedy enter our life. So here we go, everybody. So let's take them through what happened in December of 2005 for you.
All right. So in New York City, the transit authority went on strike. Okay. So it basically crippled the city during the busiest time of the year. You know, we have 8 million people that live there. Another 8 million people come there for the holidays. Okay. Transit authority goes on strike. No buses, no trains, nothing. Okay. The mayor put in these travel restrictions. And I lived in the heart of Manhattan. I lived in 48th and 3rd. And had a small 1-bedroom apartment. My firehouse was up in Spanish Harlem, and I was, at this point, an instructor at the fire academy. Okay. So in order for me to get to work, I could have driven my car, but then I wouldn't have got back to Manhattan by myself if the strike was still on. Okay. So 18 degrees with a wind chill probably of 10, probably about an 8-9 degree day, and I'm not a foul weather athlete. You know, maybe running, but not biking or anything else. I'm like, you know what, it's done for the day. I got on my bike. And I tried to ride my bike to work, and I got 4 blocks from where I lived. Oh my gosh! And you know, I remember driving up 3rd Avenue North, and this big white bus just coming from all the way to the left, and I'm like, what's going on? Like, it's getting close. It's 5:30 in the morning. It's pitch black, and I'm like, holy shit! Like, he's turning. Now he was turning down a narrow street, like a one-way street in Manhattan. The bus would normally never turn down, maybe 57th or 34th, the double 2-lane streets. Boom, right. He gets right in front of me, and I couldn't stop. And for whatever reason, I didn't bounce off the side of the bus. I got sucked underneath.
Oh my gosh! So I knew it. So everyone, I knew he got hit by the bus. You went under the.
I was under the bus, and the bike and me became one. Basically, you know, I don't mean to be too graphic, but it's the only way to tell the story. Mm-hmm. And so the bike basically split me open like a can from my anus to my sternum.
Oh my gosh.
So I was crushed, bone fractures and stuff like that. But the worst is I was bleeding to death.
Out in the street, in the cold.
In the cold.
Are you conscious of what's happening, or have you fallen unconscious or in and out?
I'm in and out. I'd like to say I was semi-conscious, but I think the mind, you know, we all underestimate the power of our mind and our thoughts, right? So I think that the mind immediately said, he doesn't need to remember any of this, because if he lives, he'll never function again. So I blacked out, like pretty much. I don't even remember anything. The last word I remember hearing, the firehouse was right around the corner. Now, I told you I was in the bar business, restaurant business, so I knew a lot of firemen. And once they cut the hood off my head, I heard one of the firefighters say, holy shit, it's Matt Long from 43 Truck.
Oh my gosh. So
at that moment, I knew I was in good hands. Not that we would not take care of anyone else any differently, but I'm a brother.
You're a brother. Yeah.
And extra care goes into that. And the first life-saving act was from a police officer. You know, our friendly rivals, but a police officer said, he's a firefighter. And instead of putting on the blue glove in that cold weather, he just reached into my groin and held my femoral artery.
You're literally bleeding out.
Bleeding out.
This man saved your life.
He's the first order of business. Saved my life.
Physically with his hand.
With his hand.
Oh my gosh, man.
Now, I know he wouldn't have done that to an average person because there's too much at risk.
Too much risk.
He took the chance because he knew I was a firefighter. Wow. And then that's all I remember.
Before we go to the next step, are you in physical pain? Maybe that's a naive question. Or are you such shock you're not feeling anything?
Total shock. Didn't feel a thing.
Okay.
I know I was screaming because they told me I was. Anything I can tell you now, anything I've told in the past is what recounts of other people's interactions with me from this moment on.
What were you screaming for, do you think? Pain or fear you were going to die?
I probably pain and You know, I don't think I knew the magnitude of what was happening. It was probably pain. You know, the fear of, or the thought of death didn't come into play probably till 6 or 7 weeks later when I was awake and realized what I was going through. You know, the pity parties that we'll talk about.
I want to just first just stop and think. You're going to bleed to death in this street.
Yeah.
Because a part of the story, in every story, when someone has a story like yours, there are other heroic things, kind of even like the fires in California that I'm referencing, like of all the tragedy there, and if there was arson involved. But then there's all the heroic things, not just the firefighters, but the people that are donating and showing up every day. So this man, do you know who he is?
I have his name,
Really?
but we've never met. I tried to go a couple of times when I was fresh out of the hospital, and the comeback was on top of me. Like it was the comeback was happening, and I wanted to make sure all those people that did something for me knew that it was happening.
That's awesome.
The comeback wasn't for me only.
Yeah. Well, it won't be for you only today either. There's going to be millions of people who are going to be inspired. First things first, everybody, let's just step back for a second. I know you think you're having a bad day or a bad week or a bad month, or you're going through a bad time. I would just say this to you, and you may really be, but compared to what? And if this man can go through what he went through to be sitting here today on the other side of this, and successful speaker and author, great family man, because we're going to go through this journey. If he can come out from under this bus, crushed, bleeding to death, split in half, about to die, tell them 1% chance to live, you can certainly come back from what you're going through. You can certainly survive this time. And God is in your life as well. Okay, so let's walk through what's next from there. What's the next thing you remember, or the next things that happened?
So the next thing that happened was they stabilized me, slowed the bleeding, and got me to New York Presbyterian Hospital. There was two options, right? They could have made a right turn down 2nd Avenue and take me to Bellevue, or they went to First and made a left to New York Presbyterian. So I think that was the second order of business to save my life. I'm not.
Why?
Because it was just the right hospital with the right doctors and at the right time. Like I've gone back to tell my doctors, thank you for what you've done for me. And one of them was brutally honest with me. He says, look, we didn't save your life. He goes, everything happened. Everything was in line. Like you weren't meant to die. And I was like, what? What do you mean? He goes, your accident happened at 5:38 in the morning. He goes, if it would have happened at 6:38 in the morning, all those operating rooms would have been booked, done, ready to go. And you would have been waiting in that emergency room for another hour.
And died. Oh my gosh.
So he says, so the fact that you got here before everyone else got bumped and you went from room to room to room to room until we had you stable.
Wow. You know, that makes me think, ironically, one, how blessed you are that that was the case and it was destiny that you're here. But the other part of it is, just what struck me when you said it, is like, this is tragedies are happening daily to the point where there's not even enough beds. And we just go through our day thinking, oh, this person gave me a like that I didn't get on Instagram, or said something bad to me, or cut me off in traffic, or the things we magnify in our life. And as we're magnifying those things, there's people like you that are on the verge of losing their life anywhere in the world right now, at any moment, in any emergency room, at any hospital, at any time. It's just the things we make a big deal in our life compared to the actual big deals. So
hey guys, I want to jump in here for a second and talk about change and growth. And you know, by the way, it's no secret how people get ahead in life or how they grow. And also taking a look at the future. If you want to change your future, you got to change the things you're doing. If you continue to do the same things, you're probably going to produce the same results. But if you get into a new environment where you're learning new things and you're around other people that are growth oriented, you're much more likely to do that yourself. And that's why I love Growth Day. Write this down for a second. growthday.com/ed. My friend Brendan Bouchard has created the most incredible personal development and business app that I've ever seen in my life. Everything from goal setting software to personal accountability, journaling, courses, thousands of dollars worth of courses in there as well. I create content in there on Mondays where I contribute, as do a whole bunch of other influencers, like the Avengers of influencers and business minds in there. It's the Netflix for high achievers or people that want to be high achievers. So go check it out. My friend Brennan's made it very affordable, very easy to get involved. Go to growthday.com/ed. That's growthday.com/ed.
you now are there, you gone to the right place. What ends up saving your life, or when is the decisions made, et cetera, et cetera? What are you faced with?
So in the first like 5 or 6 hours of the ordeal, they gathered my family. All right. So I'm one of 9 children. I'm the second oldest, 7 boys, 2 girls. There's 3 firemen and the rest of different jobs, Wall Street, school, teachers, whatever. So they gathered my mom and dad. I was single, so they got my mom and dad. They got all my family members to the hospital. And this is when the percentage was given out. I always feel for doctors as they have, in this situation, an ER doctor has a tough job. Like they have to go outside to a family member and give them hope. But there's a line between false hope and actual, like something's going to be positive here. So I don't know how they do it, but it's part of their profession. They know how they do it. Doctor goes out to tell my mom and my dad that this is as bad as it gets. We're going to do everything we can, but he has about a 1% chance to live. And he only went out. Now, again, I'm still friends with him as well. And he only went out because the nurses begged him to stop wasting blood and to let me expire. Oh my God. So he said, let me go out and talk to the parents, and I'll be back in 30 to 60 seconds, and we'll see what happens. Whoa. So my mom, this is a very pivotal point for in my journey, because I teach the strength of my mother. And she basically, stubborn Irish Catholic woman, and she told the doctor flat out, do the best you can. He's running the Boston Marathon in April. And the doctor was like, now he was a runner who just finished the same marathon, but an hour and a half slower than me.
Are you kidding me?
So he said,
an hour and a half slower.
He was like, what? He's running Boston? So he ran back into the room, looked up at the monitors, and my heartbeat was down somewhere 29 to 31 beats per minute.
Oh boy.
And he said, keep working. We're not dealing with a regular person here. His body is trained to go through insult. Keep working.
Oh my gosh.
And 68 units of blood in 11 hours.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So that's why the nurses are like, hey, we're just pouring blood into this guy. It's just going out.
I was like a sieve.
Oh my goodness.
But they finally got me to interventional radiology, and a doctor there sealed up all the veins that were cut.
Wow.
And they finally took care of it. And I stabilized over the next 5 to 6 weeks.
What was do you remember your first thought when you woke up, or what you remember from that experience?
Oh, I wanted to get the hell out of bed. Like as soon as I woke up.
Did you not understand the magnitude?
I had no idea.
Yeah.
So when I talked about the mind earlier being so powerful, I forgot things before the accident. So when they come in to do like a cognitive test to see how bad the head was hurt, and they would ask me if I like to travel, and I'm sitting there with I had like maybe a fireman in the room with me and my mom, and I'm like, no, I don't like to travel. And my buddy goes, we just went to Puerto Rico together. We had I went, oh yeah, we went to Puerto Rico. So when people told me things, they came back. And I think that was just part of the mind saying, this guy doesn't need to know what happened to him.
Wow. It's God's way of protecting us somehow. Or
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, here we go, guys. And we're going to pull apart some lessons from this as well. I'm just, it's interesting. When you hear stories like this, you read it in a book. It's powerful. I recommend everybody read the book. Or if we do a podcast and you listen to it, or we do Zoom, it's different when you sit right next to someone this has happened to. I just can tell you, even my own personal experience listening to you, it's very different being 3 feet away from a person who has gone through something like this. You just feel something from them. Something about their spirit's a little bit tougher. Tougher is what I would say about you. Also, just listening to you, you're a real person. You know what I mean? Everyone can hear your family background and where you come from and what your career was. This is a real human being. I think we always think superheroes are like 6'8", can reverse windmill dunk. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Or can sing like Adele. Everyday people are heroes. You can't measure the heart of a champion, right? You can't. So after all of this sort of settles out and now you are alive, then there's this idea of like walking, right? That would be nice to be able to do again. What was the prognosis on that even happening? Never mind ever running again or running a marathon again. What about walking? I'm just curious. Was that in the cards from the beginning, or was there a concern about that?
No, that was in the cards from the very beginning. I think because of my personality, once I woke up, I was like, okay, let's, how do I get out of here?
Mm-hmm.
What's happening? Mm-hmm. What are these pieces of metal coming out of my abdomen, my leg? What's on my neck? I was on a ventilator. I had a feeding tube. I'm like, I need to go. So, and the doctor was like, my brother Jim and I are the closest of the 9. He's only like 13 months apart, younger than me. But he had to be there to say, hey, listen, you were run over by a bus. And I'm like, what? He's like, Matt, you need to listen. You're in a good place, and the doctors are taking good care of you, and you need to listen to what he has to say.
Mm.
So I sat there. Well, I was laying there, and the doctor said, listen, you're going to be here for quite a while.
Mm.
And I said, oh, okay. And well, what's next for me, Doc? He's like, look, let's not go down that road right now because you have a lot of surgeries. We have a lot of things to fix. And he goes, we're going to do the best we can. He goes, but I can't guarantee anything. You'd be lucky if you're walking with a cane or a crutch the rest of your life.
Wow. It's amazing. You literally sometimes will say to somebody kind of joking like, well, what if you got hit by a bus? Yeah, what would you do if you got hit by a bus? You were literally hit by the bus. Now you shouldn't have probably lived. You end up living, metal stuff sticking out of everywhere, ventilator, and probably aren't going to walk. I'm going to give you guys a spoiler alert just so you're about to know the lessons. This dude ran that marathon 3 years later. I just want you to get this. So from that right where we are, and the reason I give you the spoiler alert is we're going to fill the gaps in with the lessons. But from that bed, 3 years later, he runs that marathon.
Yep.
Just so you know. By the way, that's badass and you're a stud. Yeah, you're a stud. I mean, I know it's your story, right, but maybe sitting here hearing yourself, like I know you've told it a lot. Like, is that not freaking ridiculous that 3 years later you end up doing that? Is that not...
Yeah, it's insane.
It's insane.
Yeah. No, and I accepted the fact that it was insane, and I don't think I knew how badass it was. One day when I was rebuilding myself, I would go from different gyms where I lived, and I'm training, and some guy came up to me in the gym, and he said, "Are you the guy got hit by the bus?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Man, you're 1%." And I was, "I'm what?" He goes, "No." He goes, the stuff that SEALs are made of, the stuff that Rangers are made of, those special military people they're made of, that's what you're made of.
And you know what? Something's interesting. I think you'd agree with me on this because you are. You won't ever know that about yourself in life until you go through your biggest valley in your life. Which you like a SEAL figures out, I'm made of this stuff because they went through SEAL training, right? They know that. Most of us will never know what we're made of unless in some strange way we're given the gift almost of the toughest moments of our life. Would you agree with that?
100%. I say it all the time. God doesn't give weak people hard things to do. God gives hard things to do to strong people. And Ed, I've said this 1,000 times, and I got this from my mom, but I was chosen because I was strong enough to do it. And maybe my story being told by you or John, our friend, or through the book will help someone not as strong not give up.
I love that. By the way, that's a lesson for everybody else. What you're going through right now, and then your test becomes your testimony. Your testimony can help the weaker person go through what they're going through, and that's why you need to get through it. Man, I'm loving this right now. Just so you know, this is kind of why I did the show. What we're doing right now, I do a lot of topics, but if we're going to go to kind of the core of why I do the show, it's this right now. You used a term a minute ago that I caught, which was rebuild myself. I want to talk about that. Take us through the different surgeries you had, how many you had, but this idea of rebuilding yourself, I think a lot of people need to hear real close what you're about to say, because I think a lot of people, they may not have been hit by a bus, and I don't mean to be too goofy here, but metaphorically, something's hitting them like a bus right now. Their
Absolutely.
business gone away, their relationship went away, a friend's, hurt them in a way, or someone stole
Lost
or taken,
lost
a loved one, exactly. And life's hit them by a bus, and they're going to have to rebuild themselves. So what did that look like? How many surgeries? What did you start to do? And what about this rebuilding yourself thing?
All right, so we'll go through the hospital. I spent 5 months in this hospital. I did my rehab there and everything after, but I spent 5 months in the hospital, had about 43 surgeries in that period of time.
43 surgeries?
43 different surgeries. Most of them were internal. Look, the bones healed. They put bones back together, but I'll start with the left foot up, broken foot. Every fracture was compound, meaning the bone came out the skin. Tib, fib, compound fracture. Femur, compound fracture. Right side of the pelvis, compound fracture. Right shoulder, compound fracture. My doctor would explain to me, and I to this day really don't understand how it's possible, but his exact words to me was that my right leg was no longer functionally attached to my body. I'm like, okay. Yeah, I don't know what to say about that.
Wow.
Now, that is the leg that has most of my muscle damage and nerve damage. And then the worst of all was my abdominal wall was cut by the bike and severed my my rectum. I had a colostomy bag for 2 years, multiple skin grafts to close the wounds.
My gosh.
Yeah, I mean, it was as bad as it gets. And he operated on a lot of soldiers and stuff like that. And I don't like to compare myself to that at all.
Sure.
I hold all our military in the highest regard, so I would never compare myself. But he goes, I've been to war zone hospitals. He goes, and you were as bad as it gets.
What about your mind? When you say that, I thought of, any PTSD or your spirit and your mind just like going, why this? You had to had some moments of, why'd this happen to me? Or I don't want to, this isn't fair. You must have had some of that.
I had a lot of it. And it didn't get really bad until I left the hospital. So when I was in the hospital, oddly enough, no, I wouldn't want to be in the hospital for 5 months, but there was a safety factor there. I had that little button.
Mm-hmm.
And if I needed anything at night, I hit that button. And in the next few minutes, a nurse was coming to see me. When I was sent home, I was still in a wheelchair. My younger brother moved into my house, put his life on hold, and he lived on my couch. And I didn't have that button anymore. So what I did have, Ed, was a side table about as big as that one in the middle here with about 19 different medications on it. And night after night, I rolled over and looked at them and said, is it enough? And the fight with myself was, well, you just got ran over by a 40,000-pound bus. I'm not sure it's enough.
What do you mean by is it enough? What do you mean?
To kill me.
I thought that's what you meant, but I wanted to make sure.
Was it enough to take?
Wow.
That would make me go to sleep and end this. And jokingly, my personality and my grit that I didn't know I had, this will not to give up that I didn't know I had, or maybe some stories in my life before should have gave me a warning that I have it. But I said, well, if a bus didn't kill me, I'm here now. And I take all those, what happens if it doesn't kill me? What am I, a vegetable? What do I do to my family? Am I brain dead? What do I do? What do I do? What am I doing?
What if you would have, was there ever a moment there, Matt, where if you knew it could have taken your life, you knew it would have worked, would you have partaken in taking it, do you think? Was there ever a moment like that?
Yeah, I think if I knew for sure that I could stop the pain and the doubt of what my life was going to be like, the unknown, I would have done it.
Wow.
Yeah, if I knew for sure. Wow. But I didn't. And I'm glad I didn't.
I'm glad you didn't. A couple million people are glad you didn't.
Thank you.
Well, more than that, probably. Do you think, wow.
Ed, my moments of pity, I call them pity parties, right? So I allow myself a pity party even today. But I don't let the pity party win. And my moments of pity were not why me, why did this happen, why am I hurt, why I'm in pain. My moments of pity were one question: why did I live? And I remember having a conversation with a family priest about it, and he had asked me. He came in to visit me, and I was very angry. I was still in the hospital. I was very angry at the time, and my parents said, let Father Jim go in and talk to him. So Father Jim came in, and I was rolling my eyes a little bit, like, here we go, God has a plan for me, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, okay. It's the first time I remember lying to a priest. I'm 38 years old. I felt bad about it. He asked me flat out if I was angry with God. And I should have said yes. And I didn't. I said, no, I'm not angry with God. I said, but Father Jim, I don't need to know why this happened to me. I need to know why I lived. And he said, that's between you and him. And that was the end of the conversation.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. It's a simple truth. No matter who you are, mental health challenges can affect you. And how you manage them can make all the difference. That's why everyone should have access to mental health support that meets them where they are and helps them get through. BetterHelp provides online therapy on your schedule. It's flexible, simple to use, and more affordable than in-person therapy. Connect with a licensed therapist selected just for you. Learn more at BetterHelp.com. That's better, HELP.com. mylet.com. Running a small business means you're wearing a lot of hats. Your personal phone becomes your business phone and vice versa, and the thing just blows up all day long, and it's hard to tell the difference between one and the other. And as your team grows, it becomes almost impossible to manage your personal phone number along with your business phone number. That's where OpenPhone comes in. OpenPhone is one of the top business phone systems in the world. They'll help you separate your personal life from your growing business for just $15 a month. You get complete transparency and visibility into everything happening with your business phone number. OpenPhone works through an app on your phone or your computer and integrates with hundreds of different systems. They use AI-powered call transcripts and summaries, so you'll have summary of your phone call with action items. Right now, OpenPhone is offering 20% off for your first 6 months if you go to openphone.com/Mylett. That's OpenPhone.com/Mylett for 20% off 6 months. Openphone.com/Mylett. And if you have existing numbers with another service, OpenPhone will port them over at no extra charge.
Are you convinced that part of the reason you lived is like what we're doing right now? Like you writing the book and us talking about this and the inspirational part of it?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. I believe that the first 38 years of my life were great. I was a happy-go-lucky kid running around Manhattan, firefighter, you know, chasing women, doing everything I could, jock. The first time I had the opportunity to tell my story, I didn't think anything of it until I got an email. Then I got another email. Then I got another email. Then I'm getting texts and someone's following me on Instagram or someone's doing else and they're saying, thank you for not giving up.
Yeah. Well, thank you for not giving up. I can tell you that today. This moves me, FYI. Like it moves me. I want to go back to this not knowing thing. You got me a little bit today, bro. I'm a little bit emotional on this one. Was that as hard as the physical pain? I think a lot of people listening to this, like they're like, hey, you know what I'm most struggling with isn't even so much that this stuff's happened to me or that I'm in this spot. It's that I don't know what's next. I don't know what's coming. How hard was that part of it? And what did you do about that? Just put your head down day by day, or what did you do?
The mental part of it was the worst, right? So
that says a lot based on your injuries and 47 surgeries.
Correct. And it is, and it's probably that way for everyone, no matter what we talk about, whether it's the loved one that they lost or a diagnosis they got or, you know, lost their job. The mental side of it is the worst. And I remember talking to my doctor one time and I was just kind of like sarcastically saying, I'm like, hey, well, thanks a lot. You know, I still had a colostomy bag. I was still in pretty bad shape and I was hoping to get rid of things. I didn't want the colostomy bag for, you know, at all. And I said, I said to him, you know, I appreciate your hard work, but you fell short. And we had that kind of rapport. And he said, listen, our job is not to worry about the quality of life. It's about saving your life. We saved your life. I said, okay. He goes, the quality of life is up to you. So that was the first like little smack I got from someone outside family, but
yeah,
pretty much family now as a doctor. And I took a long time for that to set in. Like, what does that mean? Like, what the quality of life is up to me. I mean, I'm in a wheelchair part of the day. I have a colostomy bag. I went from 178 pounds, 12% body fat to 122 pounds, no muscle tone. And I look like my 90-year-old grandfather. I said, I don't understand this. And that and a conversation with my mother that really made me change my outlook about what was happening to me. Okay, adversity, right? A lot of us in this business or talk that have stories, we talk about the adversity we overcame. Okay, and I know for a fact, just from talking to you earlier, that you haven't overcome your adversity from your baseball accident. You live with it. So I had to accept this accident. I had to accept all the injuries. I had to accept the new body and say, what are we going to do about it? What quality of life am I going to get back? Because I can't go to a doctor for it. So I started plugging away.
I'm just picturing you because now I'm doing the math. So if you're 2 years with a colostomy bag, you're a year out of that and run the marathon, right?
Correct.
Yeah, that's bananas. So was part of, obviously, we would spend hours on the physical pain of physical therapy and going through the surgeries and the mental pain of waking up with it every day. It's one thing to hear a story. It's another thing like, Monday was this way for you. Tuesday was this day. Wednesday, the next Monday, the next. It's every day. Any of you that have even had the flu for 8 days, imagine years of surgery, pain, physical therapy. You can no longer also do what you used to love to do, which is to be physical and be active. Was part of what got you through, or were you not envisioning this? Setting the goal to go run this marathon again? Was that like, I got something to look forward to, I've set a goal? Did that help get you through, or it wasn't till years later you're like, nah, maybe I run a marathon?
It wasn't to a moment in the journey. So no, that is not what got me through.
What is it that got you through?
So the catalyst to get my human spirit fired up and all the burners inside me to start working again was a conversation with Mom. And I had said to my mother in a nutshell, I just said to her, I'm glad you prayed and I lived. I wish you prayed for me to die. And that's something you don't say to your mom. Especially the Irish Catholic stubborn mom who told the doctor he's running a marathon in 4 months after this, patch him up, put a Band-Aid on, right? Then she said to me, enough's enough. She said, you're not the only person in this world that is suffering. You are not the only one going through a tough time. She goes, we have not left your side for 5 months, 43 surgeries. Everyone has been here. If you want to be a miserable SOB, the rest of your life, do it by yourself. End of conversation. Some tough love. Now, that was the spark that I needed to hear. It took about 2 weeks before I got over the pity parties and started to say, Mom was right. There are other people. And I listen to the people you have on here when you bring in the real life story like mine. And I'm like, the woman you had on recently lost her limbs.
Yeah.
I'm like, she's 10 times worse than the life I have. So Mom was right back then. She's right today. I started plugging away. That's when I put my head down. That's when I said to myself, all right, Matt, what were you doing in your life when you were happiest? What was driving you forward as a kid? The dream to play high school basketball. You played high school basketball. What was your next dream? To make it to the college level. I didn't care where I played. I wanted to play college ball. So I always had a goal, athletic, push myself, the Ironman, the marathon, because I was confused and I didn't know what I could do next. I knew nothing else but to push my body to its limits. So I said, I want to close the chapter on Matt Long, marathon runner, Matt Long, triathlete. I wanted to go back and do those two things and then figure out what's next. And I knew they wouldn't be the same because I've accepted this new body, accepted this adversity in my life. So, I came back and did that marathon in 3 years. It took me 7 hours and 30 minutes.
You finished it.
I finished it.
Yeah, it's interesting when you're in person with somebody, your whole physiology, spirit, did you see that, Stephen? Completely changed once you talked about your mom's conversation. Like, by the way, and your intensity level, and you leaned in. And humans are awesome. When humans flip that switch, the mind, the spirit, they're capable of so much 100. Because your whole being was different. And then the goal to actually run. But it's like, did you see that, Stephen, too? Like in person, the switch in you, same guy, like just different. Just it's like a switch.
And my mother did that for me. When I talk on stage, and I'm probably a little older than you, but if you remember back in the day, the old stove, the white stove, and if you touched the middle of the stove, there was a pilot light that always burned. It's not electric like today. There was always a pilot light. And my story is, that analogy is, that's the human spirit. We all have this pilot light burning inside of us. How do you get the 4 burners going?
Wow.
And my mom did that for me. She lit them all up. And anything is possible when they're firing up.
Bro, that's awesome. What was finishing the marathon like?
Finishing was awesome. It was an emotional finish line. My family, the fire department, guys from my house, and all my doctors. Well, not all, but some of my doctors.
Were they there?
My one doctor, God rest his soul, he's not with us anymore, but he had just had a baby during my ordeal. So he missed a lot of his things with his third daughter. And I crossed the finish line. Everyone's, super ecstatic for me, congratulating me. And he pulls me aside, and this I loved. He pulls me aside really quick. He said, his wife, and that we took a picture, and he looks at his kids and he goes, girls, this is why Daddy misses Christmas. And we have a bond to this day with that family. But I was like that, another story within my story, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
here he is, a guy who sacrifices his whole life to help people. The sacrifice comes in his children.
Yeah.
I mean, he operated on me on Christmas, on New Year's, and time after time after time. And you know, this was a reward. That's why I did what I did to run that marathon. Let them know that their sacrifices did not go unfinished, unpaid back. You know.
Yeah. Bro, your story's bananas. Let's pull some more lessons out, everybody. Why'd you call it The Long Run? The book.
The book is a spinoff of a story they did in Runner's World magazine,
I know.
and it was called The Second Life,
Mm-hmm.
which is what I really liked. But we can't do that again.
Mm-hmm.
So the running magazine world, the running community, we needed to have something about running.
Mm-hmm.
It's not only about running.
Of course
You know?
not.
Okay?
Very
The-
little about running.
The long run, the journey.
Mhm.
And I jokingly take people back to who I was, my personality as a kid, overconfident, cocky kid from Brooklyn.
Mm.
I get it. Not for everyone. But when hit the fan
Mhm.
in real life, in real time, it could have been 10 years for me to run that marathon again. It could have been longer.
Mm.
Or the truth of the matter is that even though I wrote it, even though I did the marathon, did the Ironman, and I'm living a pretty good life, I still wake up in pain.
I know you do.
I still struggle and have pity parties. So my run is not over.
Brother, I love that you're being honest about that. By the way, just the idea that 2005, you're under this bus on a freezing day, bleeding out, guys holding your artery, your femoral artery, so you don't bleed out. That 3 years later, you're crossing the finish line of it's the New York City Marathon. You finish that thing, right? It's just bananas. It's just unreal. But it should give everyone hope. Like, by the way, it's a long life and a long run, but the turnaround sometimes feels long when you're doing it, but it may not. You may be one decision away, one new relationship away, but you can also be one event away from your life changing.
What makes a leader? It's a tough question, but one thing's for sure. A true leader leads by example, and a true leader takes risks too. They plunge into life with determination. For those who lead by example and who approach life with a palpable passion, there's the Range Rover Sport. Each Range Rover Sport model offers a dynamic, sophisticated take on sporting luxury. The Range Rover Sport offers focused on-road performance and world-renowned off-road capability with industry-leading features like adaptive off-road cruise control that monitors ground conditions and acclimates to the present terrain. Agility, control, and composure are achieved with dynamic air suspension, and adaptive dynamics reduces unwanted body movements to deliver smooth and composed handling. True sophistication and excellent maneuverability, all in a seriously stylish package. Sophisticated refinement meets visceral power in the Range Rover Sport, a new dimension of sporting luxury. Build your Range Rover Sport at LandRoverUSA.com.
But to your point of your today, I want to say something to you that I noticed when I came down the stairs to greet you. You turned around, and I was a little bit struck. You look great. I mean, anybody watching YouTube will see this. But you do still struggle to some extent physically. We both were talking about our ailments coming in here. I missed our interview when we were scheduled, guys, for a root canal. And this guy survives being pulled under a bus. So there's two caliber of men sitting here today. He was going to joke about it. I said, well, someone needs to bring it up. I literally had to reschedule our first interview for a root canal for a dude who was dragged under a bus. and
I let him know about it.
The caliber of toughness here is not equal. But you do still have the remnants of this, because sitting here and hearing you, people are like, okay, he's past it. It's over. This guy must be just perfect, but not true, right? You still struggle.
That's true. I still struggle. Like I said about my right leg not being functionally attached to my body, a lot of the muscle never came back. So I like to joke with my wife if we're walking down the street. I say, could you mind standing on the other side so you could put your hand on my left cheek? Because my right cheek is mush. And it makes me feel bad that you're touching something that I can't feel. and we have a joke, a laugh about it, whatever. So I have like my stabilizer muscles on my right side are gone. So I can't stand on my right leg alone. And that's easy. But to be honest, having your rectum and your anus torn apart,
Gosh.
and being in a colostomy bag for 2 years, and a doctor saying we can put you back together, but we don't know how long. We don't know if it's going to work. Like you have to train like Yeah, I told John about this, and I don't openly talk about it because it's who wants to talk about it? Like
Mhm. You need
open,
to.
and
Yep.
I had to train my rectum to operate again because it was doing nothing for 2 years.
Wow.
So before the doctor could take the colostomy bag out and put me back together, he had to know that I wasn't just going to walk around
Wow.
crapping myself.
Everywhere, right?
So what I went through, Ed, the word dignity, was gone.
Mm-mm.
So I had to enlist a friend to come in my apartment and squeeze cream of wheat into my rectum. And as soon as he was done, I kicked him out.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had to record how much went in
And how much?
and how long it stayed in.
My goodness, bro.
And I did that for 7 months, twice a week for 7 months. And it worked.
My gosh.
And the doctor knew my mentality, and he said to me, you trained for marathons, you trained for Ironmans, I need you to train to get whole. And I did it. And I mean, when he told me, and I left that doctor, I was like, no way. But I did it.
That's
I don't eat
unremarkable.
cream of wheat anymore. I'm
Right,
sorry, this isn't a commercial
no,
for
no,
cream
no.
of wheat.
But I think probably nobody is. But after that, but I'm glad you shared it because the real details of a comeback. It's easy to hear in a story. Oh, he was in pain. Oh my gosh, he had surgeries. By the way, that's a good friend.
Yes.
It's a pretty damn good friend.
He goes down anonymous.
Yeah,
till
going
the day
on.
I
Yeah,
die,
but still, that's a brother right there.
Yeah.
Gosh, what could you come back from that are listening to this? Are you hearing what this man went through? I'm sitting right with him. And by the way, I had the highest regard and admiration for you, but you're just a man, right? You're just a man. Now, I really believe this. You can't tell from looking at somebody what they're made of. And I think most human beings don't know what they're made of until they face it, until the bus of life hits them, right? And then you're defined as a man or a woman. We're all going to get hit by life's bus, whether it's happening right now or not.
Right.
They can reflect on this later if it's not happening to them. What would you say to that person? It's just happened. If they ran into you at Starbucks, my husband just left me. I just lost my dad. My business just failed. I'm totally lost and I don't have a dream in my life right now. You go, well, I know a little bit about that. What would you say?
What I would tell people is, or that person, is two things. I would say, one, what I said earlier, that God doesn't give good people easy things to do. Your journey doesn't have to be a bus. Isn't my journey. And where I would say to start is to look back in your life and figure out, because a lot of times we go through life without, remember Ed, you had a great time on your football feast? Wasn't that awesome?
Yeah, it was
Right?
awesome.
So you look back at things and you're like, sometimes we just go through life and forget those things, right? I had to do an inventory check on my life. When I was in the worst mental state, period, I had to do an inventory check, look back in the rearview mirror, say, what was Matt Long doing when I was happiest? And the answer kept coming back. I was dreaming. As a kid, I was dreaming, and dreams are goals, right? You set the standard, you set the habits, you create the plan, and you make sacrifices. It's still a dream that you want to bring to fruition. So that's what I would tell someone who's going through a hard time right now. Okay, take a deep breath. One, my mom says it, you're not the only person going through it. Two, God knows you're strong enough to succeed. Three, go back. What were you doing when you were happy?
That's good.
Figure it out and redo it. Repeat it. Start dreaming again. That's the way I would approach adversity on a blanket conversation.
I love that answer. You know, in the Hebrew, my understanding is the word dream and health are very closely correlated or almost the same word. It was just Chris Hodges become a friend of mine, runs a very, very big church, and he was discussing dreams and health, and he was saying, and I'm say this too, is that the happiest I've ever been in my life is when I'm dreaming, when I've got a vision. It's also like dream and vision can kind of be a cheesy word, but imagination is another word for that. Like when you're using your imagination, you're imagining your life. Like God gave you this imagination, and when you're a little boy or a little girl, one of the reasons I think kids are happy is they're full of imagination and dreams. And so that is a direct connection to health and well-being. You said God a couple times, but I'm around, I'm around some real God guys. You know that. You know who some of these guys are that are friends of mine, and I guess I'm told that I'm that guy a lot too. I'm wondering, in your case, you're not one of these guys that runs in, praise God, praise God. You're a quiet man that way, dignified in that regard. But I'm wondering how it impacted you. Did it make you believe in God more and less? Got closer to God, not connected at all with just overall? You can't go through that and not have some consideration of God and life and dying and what it means or where you'd go or any of that stuff.
Brought and raised Irish Catholic, church every Sunday with the family, same pew, blah, blah, blah. I believe I'm a man of faith. Do I go to church every Sunday? No. I would like to try to do that better with my family and my kids. There are some things, my belly's not acting right today to start part of my adversity, and I just say I'll watch online or see you after church. But I do believe that he put that bus there. I do believe that this was something I was meant to withstand, to go through. I do believe that conversation with Father Jim when he said, "My purpose will be known, and when I'm ready." I'm lucky enough to be able to sit in platforms like this and tell my story. And I'm lucky enough to get on a stage and get paid to tell my story. But whether I'm paid or sit here in a conversational space, the real reward comes in the email that will follow this podcast, the email that will follow a speech. And when I talk like yourself, you're on stage and you're talking to adults, right? Professionals, some that are high net worth, successful professionals. And then you have time for Q&A, and it's like they're back in high school. They don't want to raise their hand. No one raised their hand. But before my plane lands from West Coast to East Coast, I got 16 emails in my box. And you could see the tears in the email. Like, thank you. I'm going through something here. I didn't want to raise my hand. And that I believe was divine intervention. Like, okay, I'm not the smartest guy in the world. I may have been the mentally toughest guy, at least in my circle, but I was chosen for this to help others.
I love that answer, by the way. It's honest. It's honest, which is what you are. You're a good man. You're a good man.
Thank you.
How's it changed you?
I'm still a cocky, confident type of guy, and I try to do things, but I think it gave me a little more empathy towards people that might be going through things. Maybe a little more empathy, especially to my kids and my nieces and nephews. A little bit. I'm still a tough uncle, and I think I'm a tough dad. But I think, especially to my family and my kids, and I joke with them all the time. But I'm like, you know what Daddy went through. You know what Daddy went through. It's going to help you. You're built the same way, and
you come from this.
You come from this. You're cut from the same cloth, and my 12-year-old doesn't get that yet, but
that's okay.
But yeah, she will. She'll get it someday.
You know what they do? My kids. I think a lot of things with kids, I've said this before, is caught, not taught, and usually what they catch, they're not aware of until they leave your house, and then they very much are aware. I've noticed that just with my kids as well. And they're catching a bunch from you, brother. And by the way, millions of people are catching a bunch from you today too. All right, last thing I want to ask you. By the way, this has been remarkable. I mean, I'm really honored to sit with you.
And so am I.
Well, thank you.
In your presence, it's great.
You're a tough dude. You're a tough dude. I mean, root canal took me out, but it's the perfect metaphor, by the way, that you were the interview I had to move for the root canal. I think it's pretty hilarious. As I sit and listen to you, I asked you, how it's changed you. And then I wonder, I've had life incidents. I'm going to push you really hard on the last question here. I have life incidences where I've taken a lesson from it in the moment. And then I've taken another lesson a little while later. And then I've kind of given answers on shows about something. And then I've really changed my mind about something. And so I wonder how much of what we talked about today was like how you felt then compared to now. And if you could go back.
If I can go back, 19 years ago,
Mhm.
would I have the bus miss me? No.
Wow.
And the first time I was asked that question, I paused. But then I thought about it, the things that I have now in life. You know, my children, my wife, the people that have emailed me, thanking me for surviving, thanking me for writing my story, thanking me for not quitting. All that will go away, Ed. Now, that's a lot to put on a person. And I wasn't ready for that. I mean, I got emails from people that were 10 times worse than me. And I didn't know what to say to them. But keep fighting, brother. Keep fighting, sister. You got this. And I would go away and I'm like, oh my God, I just got an email from a guy they told me he's quadriplegic. What am I going to do? He's over at Christopher Reeves. He wants to meet me. I'm like, this is not good. I'm going to walk in there. And this is, I told my wife, this is not I can't handle this. And you know what? He's walking. Wow. And we're friends.
That's awesome, man.
So all that would go away.
That is unreal.
And I wouldn't want that to happen.
So you would not have the bus miss you. But bro, this is an all-time conversation right here.
I'd do it again.
This is my producer never gets emotional. Like, that's incredible. Ah, boy. If you guys don't share today's episode, I have no idea why we're doing this, because this is just one of the most remarkable conversations ever. Matt, I'm really grateful we did this. I'm grateful to John for introducing us. I want everybody to go get The Long Run. You can hire Matt to speak. You can follow him on social. Where should they find you?
So LinkedIn is the best. Matthew Long, mattlongspeaker.com is my website.
Okay.
And mattlongspeaker@gmail. Any questions? I love to take emails. And if it's just for a word of confidence or a booster you need, shoot it out.
All right. All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed today like I did. Gave you perspective. Did everything I told you in the beginning. Give you perspective, make you emotional, and give you key takeaways and insights. That's why we do the show here. This was just perfect today. God bless you, everybody. Max out.